when we get to the point where like you're too afraid to try something new, like that's just as dangerous in my head. Like then you're kind of like, then why play the game? Like if it's the same one as the one that we just played as version 2, why would I buy version 3?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Sandbox.Space weekly podcast, episode 51, if you can believe it. I, of course, am your host, Chris, joined by baby girl, who is in my lap here. Pumpkin is over there, causing trouble as normal. And, of course, every week I bring a special guest on. I'm super excited about this week's guest. We met a couple months ago at MDev. So Mondae, thank you for joining us. How are you? Monday is the fun day, as they say.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to, have the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
So before we kind of get into the meat of the articles and stuff on the industry, just get the audience to know you a little bit. So we met at MDev. You started Leap of Faith Studios, but you were previously of Bungie. So I don't know if you want to let folks just real fast let them know a little bit about you.
Yeah. You covered the highlights, but prior to Bungie, I joke around with Chris and everyone else. I'm like the most non-gamer in existence. Like I play games for research purposes. That's the chemist biologist in me. That's what I originally went to school for.
Oh, okay.
But I have a knack for management. And so I was able to leverage that to get a role with Bungie. I was a senior production engineering manager on the marathon team for about 2 years with them. And then, unfortunately impacted by the rifts, but it kind of came at the right moment because me and my co-founder, Robert Byer, took the opportunity to create Leap of Faith Studios. And so now underneath our own umbrella, we're creating games our way, of course, with the same intent to create worlds that, inspire the hundreds of millions and create hours of play. But really what we wanted to do was to create job security for our team by focusing on being operationally sound. Both him and I come from operations management, and there was a lot of things that we have seen and heard about from other people in the AAA industry where it's just like, you won't just need good managers. You won't just need people that are like constantly looking at the numbers instead of always doing things by like, oh, I feel like I need to do this. And so with Leap of Faith, our foundation is, does it operationally make sense? Is it operationally sound? And with building that firm foundation, we are able to have more creative freedoms with our projects. And it's been a great, I think we're 7 months in now, 7-ish months in.
Okay.
And it's been like a whirlwind. Got to meet great people like you and a few others at MDev. And now we're prepping to go to GDC.
Sweet. Yeah, I believe I'm going to be at GDC. Are you showcasing there, or are you just going and...
Nice. We're showcasing. So we have our legal representation is actually Perkins Coie, which is a pretty well-known name for like gaming legality. And for one of their things, they always have to have one of their clients kind of showcase a game as part of the deal that they have. And so this year they chose us. So we will be in the DDC play area showcasing our main project, which is Project Haven, our crafting survival game.
Sweet. Yeah, I should be. We're kind of going over the budget for the gaming accelerator and seeing what we want to do for this year. But I believe we're going to be at GDC. We might be at DICE. Trying to go to as many shows and stuff as we can this year. But that's exciting. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll have to grab a lunch or dinner or something then when we're out there.
Oh, 200%. Yeah.
So that's really intriguing. You mentioned coming from an operations background. So I've been doing game development since 2012. I have been helping between the incubator, the accelerator, GDEX, teaching. I've been helping a lot of people. I was thinking about it the other day. I think I've helped get probably close to 50 companies up and running over the past 13 years or whatever. And it is, I would say, definitely less than 10%, but probably less than 5% of those studios are coming at it with an operations mindset. Almost all of them are coming at it from I'm a game developer. I want to make games. Let's get a team together. And then they're like, wait, how do we incorporate a business? How do we create agreements? Exactly. How do we negotiate with a publisher? So one of the things that I tell folks a lot, because I teach at a local college here, And one of the things I tell my students, that they're all sort of first year, kind of, blue eyed, everything is wondrous, right?
Yeah.
But I try to tell them is like, you really need to think about the sort of the business and the logistics end, because at the end of the day, you are running a business, and that business needs
Hmm.
to, unless you're independently wealthy, which I am not, and I assume you probably aren't either.
Nope.
Uh,
Nope.
you need to at least have enough money that people can eat and pay their
Yeah.
rents and take care of their families and everything. And that's a system shock for a lot of developers, particularly devs. I've noticed. You would think that the experienced devs coming out of AAA would be the ones that are the best set to run a studio and an indie studio, and in my experience, they are the worst. Just because they're used to being in a large environment where all that stuff is taken care of, all the HR stuff,
Yeah.
all the procurement things, like all that's just like, Bungie will handle it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then when you create your own business, like you got to handle it.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and so
And
I
even for me,
yeah, go ahead.
mhm. I was just gonna add in, like, even for me, I do like mentorship. I'm a mentor for a lot of different programs as well. When I talk to people who are like, "Yeah, I started a studio," I was like, "Where's your business plan?" And they're like, why do I need a business plan? I'm making video games. I was like, but it's a business. Like, if you're expecting to make money off of it, like, it's one thing to say I create games and it's projects and I put them on itch and maybe put them on Steam, but it's like a passion. It's not really a business. But as soon as you say, like, I have a studio and I want this to be my future and I'm going to hire people, it is a business. And
Yeah,
it's unfortunate because for a lot of people, they don't think about that, but you have to. It is a business.
for sure. Oh, dude, I would be happy if some of these companies, these startups that I've helped get going, even knew who owned the product they're working on. Because a lot of them,
Mm.
like, they'll be like, oh yeah, 15 people have touched this game at some point. I was like, do you have assignments of copyright from them? Like, do we know,
Yeah.
like, who owns this thing?
Yeah.
And you just don't think about it because again too, like sometimes student projects, you see this a lot where it might be like a capstone thing where students have worked together
Hmm.
on it, and then they want to build it into something going forward. And yeah, they just don't realize that like somebody has to own it. And like if somebody touched this product 2 years ago, somebody wrote some code in there and that code is still in there, they can put a full stop to your project
Yes, they can.
if they want to. Um,
Yeah.
Another big one for all the students out there: the Maya educational license. Do not use it to make your products. That kills a lot of students because all of your assets get watermarked, and then you're not allowed to use them in commercial products, and it's a whole big pain.
Yeah.
But
Yes, it is.
yeah, so we are going to talk a little bit about layoffs today, which has been the trend on this podcast, unfortunately, since its inception.
Hmm.
But since you sort of personally have gone through it, obviously you don't need to talk about the specifics on, Bungie or whatever. But let me pick up first couple of articles here real fast, and we'll kind of dig into that. So let me grab our showcase here. So the first article I've got is from gamesindustry.biz. Microsoft to lay off unknown number of staff. Employees across gaming, security, and sales divisions will be affected. This is by Sophie McAvoy. And then the next one we have is Meta to lay off 5% of its staff as part of its quote-unquote performance-based cuts. This is also from gamesindustry.biz. That's estimated to be about 3,600 jobs. Again, another Sophie McAvoy article. It seems like she's doing all the layoffs stuff. So, Monday, what is this your sort of initial thoughts about the kind of state of the industry and how we've seen just so many layoffs? And I don't know if you know this, but we were working on my studio in combination and partnership with another studio. We were working on an expansion for a AAA game that was going to come out. So this was last year. And we were going to be the third phase and sort of a three-phased approach to expansions for a game.
Yeah.
Big game, sold very well. We got our contract canceled sort of out of nowhere. It was a whole thing. And it wasn't probably less than 30 days before we started to see other contracts getting closed, other partners losing their gigs. So we were kind of on that beginning precipice. We weren't employees; we were, contractors. But we were
Yeah.
on that beginning precipice early last year, and the flood has not seemed to stop. So, curious about your thoughts on the industry and where we're going with this.
Yeah. I mean, I think overall, I think the industry is just leaning itself out to where, in my opinion, it should have stayed. I think the pandemic, COVID, changed a lot of things with the gaming industry because all of a sudden there was all these people that were at home and had nothing to do because businesses were shut down. And so there was like this surge of gamers and people buying every single game and diving into like hundreds and thousands of hours of like games. And so studios looked at that and they looked at that trend and they're like, we can maximize this. Let's staff up, let's make more products, let's make more DLCs and all of these things. And for, 2, 3 years, it worked. People were still buying these products. They were at home, they were buying games. There was this surge of influencers and Twitch and all these things happen where more people are like introduced to games very quickly. Um, and now we're kind of getting back to normal. People are going back to work. We don't have the same amount of time, and our economy is changing. And so all of these studios who could like almost like overstuff themselves with all these employees making all of these games because there was so much money pouring in are now realizing like, hey, there's not as much money pouring in. There's not as many people playing our games. Let's start reducing staff. And then the other thing too is like gamers have gotten picky. Like we've seen what can happen when you make a good game with like Baldur's Gate 3 and a lot of indie titles that come out that are just better polished quality than some of the AAA games that we've come to know and love.
Yeah,
And so a lot of gamers are making the decision of like, why would I pay $80 for a game that I'm gonna have to pay another $30 for, another $20 for, or wait for you to patch it when I could just play, Warframe for free or something like that? Like, why would I waste my money? Um,
yeah. There's a great
and
article about. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, go ahead. Yeah.
So there's a great article came out a couple weeks ago. I wish I could remember. I'll try to see if I can dig it up. But it was talking about the Path of Exile 2 early access that just came out. And maybe I think it was a YouTube video. And they were just like, it is Grinding Gear Games, which is a pretty small studio from New Zealand, is like kicking the shit out of Blizzard. Like the
Yeah.
game is $30 for early access. You get
Hmm.
$30 in the microtransaction credit. So in essence, it's quote unquote free. The game
Free.
will be
Yeah.
completely free when it comes out of early access. The early access period is probably going to be about 6 to 12 months. And even in early access, it's like demonstrably better than Diablo 4 in numerous ways. And
Yes.
its microtransactions are much more fairly priced. The amount of
Hmm.
content in the game. So it's just like how, to your point, I think how can you justify, and I also think that consumers have a right to be sort of like rightly angry at when you look at something like Diablo 4. And I'm a big Diablo guy. Like I actually
Yeah.
played Diablo 4. I enjoyed it. I moved back to Path of Exile after maybe 3 months, just because I think Path of Exile is a more interesting game for me. But
Hmm.
I mean, you do have to ask. You're paying $70 for Diablo 4, then you're paying I think $40 for each expansion that comes out. And then when you look at the microtransaction shop within Diablo 4, you would think like for a game you're paying
Crazy.
for, the microtransactions would be like reasonably priced. They're so
No.
expensive. They're way more expensive
Yes.
than Path of Exile. And the only, there's sort of the cynical answer and there's the business answer. I think the cynical answer is, well, they can get that amount of money, so they're going to, right?
Hmm.
There's whales out there, so they're going to. The business answer, and maybe this is a little bit more generous to Blizzard, and it hurts me to say this because I love, dude, I grew up with all the Blizzard games. I play like every Blizzard game pretty much from the start.
Yeah.
They have to pay for this bloated machine that
Yeah.
has so many people, and it also has like just so many elements to it, which I
Yeah.
also think is kind of the interesting thing because I don't want to rip on the. I think there's a tendency in the sort of business investing world to like be like, well, we have too many employees. That's always the go-to answer to save money. And then you also look at, well, Activision Blizzard did exceedingly well over the past couple of years. Their profit margins were great. So like, I don't know if it's the number of people that's the problem. I think it might be your expectations for returns that's kind of the
Yeah.
problem. But
Exactly.
but we can have a conversation about that later. Um,
Yeah. No,
but
I
the
think
other,
you're 100% right. And I think it goes into like the business aspect of exactly what you're saying. Like they are overestimating the returns that they're going to get on these hundreds of million-dollar investments that they're putting on the games because of the skew and the previous data. And I'll nerd out on data. Like I have a master's
please,
in data analytics, so like data is my jam. And I'm like,
I'm
we had
learning
a
so much
giant.
about you today.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I am an onion, and man, it's crazy in there. But we have a major skew in the data for like the trends for people consuming digital products in games, whether it's DLC, whether it's expansions, whether it's microtransactions, whether it's premium products, from 2019 to like right around mid 2023. And if we're not taking that into account when we do these projections for the next game, you are overestimating what your title is going to generate. And then when that doesn't happen, all of a sudden your studio is in the hole. And the only thing that you can do is reduce staff because, maybe you do have redundancy. You realize we don't need 13 tech artists, we only need seven. And so now you have to let people go. But sometimes in some cases it is to like help the bottom line. Like we
Sure.
have Q4 that we need to like account for, and we know our next title needs to generate X. And the way that we can bump that up is to kind of like get that bottom floor a little bit higher before it comes out. So that way those revenue margins that it has to gap isn't as big. And that's just one of the
Yeah.
things that we noticed. And that's one of the things where it's like with Leap of Faith, we're like, we have to be operationally sound. Like for our games, we're not looking for astronomically large budgets. We're not really overestimating. If anything, we kind of like average down on what it could be just to make sure like if it does better than that, great. But if it doesn't, we're still okay. But I think a lot of times, a lot of developers, whether it's AAA or even indie, they're almost looking for that like 1,000-hour play for the next 10 years, kind of like the game that's going to change everything. And in reality, every game can't be the
Yeah.
next world changing game.
Well, I think the other thing too is that history, if history's taught us anything, it's that you can't really predict those.
Hmm.
All the big hits, like nobody predicted Fortnite was going to be this monstrosity
Oh
that it
gosh,
is
yeah.
now. I think it's sort of. I've been playing a lot of Cyberpunk lately, and I think about The Witcher 3. And The Witcher 3 is an amazing game, but they didn't predict that The Witcher 3 was. I mean, that game accelerated CDPR into just a whole nother level.
Mhm.
And then you've also got, I remember, I still think about this. I don't know why this is stuck in my head, but when the first Tomb Raider revision came out and Square Enix had their earnings call and they were like, oh, yeah, we didn't, Tomb Raider underperformed or whatever. And everyone at that was like, what the fuck are you talking? Like, Tomb Raider sold great. Like, who
Yeah,
is doing your performance analytics? Like, if you went in to Tomb Raider, the reboot, expecting like some number and the numbers you got didn't it just seemed weird for a lot of analysts where they're like, this game sold really well, this game sold way better than a lot of us thought it was going to, and yet you're calling it a disappointment. You might need to go back to your whiteboard and sort of
yeah,
look at your internal analysis on this stuff. And I wasn't in that room. I don't know, but I do think when you do Aruba, I think at the time it sold like 5 or 7 million units or something. I was like, that's pretty damn good. But I also I tell a lot of startup studios, and I know people kind of look at me. They're like, really? I tell them, I was like, I would pin your budget on 50,000 units sold as your break even. And I say that because that is a solid number, but it's not a guaranteed number. And
yeah,
an indie studio that can sell 50 to 100,000 units is actually doing very well. We're used to hearing units in the millions because of these large AAA studios, but particularly for a first game, smaller studios, indie studios, like you're not gonna, the average is like you sell like 3 units or whatever.
yeah,
Sorry, Pumps, I gotta put you down there. And so, just sort of setting your break even appropriately is important. And I mean, it's been a couple months since we talked about this, but with the investor and publisher space where it's at right now, it's hard to get money to
yeah.
fund your smaller titles. And so it is kind of wild. Yeah, I have maybe we can talk about this over a drink or something at GDC, because I have this whole thing where I think the problem. I'm a really big fan of. I read a book a long time ago about sort of business and productivity, and I I don't know what it was. I need to write this stuff down. My brain can't keep track of information anymore. Um, but there was a big thing, and this guy I used to work with. My background's in healthcare. Um, was it was always about aligned incentives. Like that was the most important thing. Is you need to make sure everybody on your team, everybody you're working with, has aligned incentives, so that way you're all pushing in the same direction towards the same goal. And I think one of the issues that we're having in the United States right now is that we don't have aligned incentives on practically anything. Like businesses and employees' incentives are not aligned. Retirement incentives are not aligned. Our healthcare system is a mess. So the incentives for the healthcare system is, since we have a privatized system, is to make lots of money, which is not the incentive of what the employer is, which is to spend less money, which is not the incentive of what the employee is, which is to have friggin' healthcare coverage, right? And
Exactly.
so we have all of these little areas where we don't have aligned incentives, and it makes it hard to work together to sort of row the boat together
Yeah.
in the same direction. My worry is that this is going to cause a lot of harm before it gets figured out, but maybe that's what's needed. However,
Yeah.
that brings us to our second article here,
Uh-oh.
which is this is from Ars Technica, Benji Edwards. Google CEO says over 25% of new Google code is generated by AI. So now we're in the AI debate. I'm throwing you in the deep water here. I'm kind of curious if you're allowed to talk about any of it, because we've started to see. I mean, AI has become a pretty large part of the games industry, obviously, since we're always kind of at the cutting edge. Have you seen, or what has your maybe perspective been on AI in the game space? Did you see a lot of like AI implementation at Bungie for anything?
Nothing at Bungie. Nothing at Bungie that I can like speak to or that comes to mind, but I do have spicy takes. Another layer. So
Let's get
my
spicy.
master's is a dual master's. It's data analytics and applied artificial intelligence. So like
Okay.
I am very much pro AI, and I think that there's a misconception on what AI in our like sci-fi Star Wars brains when we hear AI, what we think of versus
Sure.
like what AI and like business practices looks like. And so in my view, like we've been using AI in gaming for a long time. Like
Oh yeah.
Visual
Absolutely.
Studio has Copilot in there. Like, I mean, we have AI behavior trees. Like there's different levels to AI, and there's a difference between AI and machine learning technology, especially when you
Sure.
apply it. Um,
Well, I always tell people
I
too, because I talk to
mhm.
lots of folks. I'm sure maybe Tennessee's the same, that just don't get the games industry, don't think very highly of it. Uh,
Yeah, and I don't
and
know why.
yeah, and I'll talk about, it's like, you guys talk about AI. That's like, shit, dude, we've been doing AI stuff for like 40 years. I mean, NPC interactions, simulate real time
Thank you.
simulations, like all sorts of
Yeah,
stuff that falls under that kind of AI umbrella. Games have been at the forefront of it forever. And now, obviously, you
yeah,
talk about like machine learning, Sony's big thing with their PSSR and some of their
mhm,
internal machine learning that was implemented in the PS5 Pro, which is
yeah,
obviously a test bed for what's going to be in the PS6. You know,
yeah, exactly.
so I didn't. I cut you off,
Yeah,
so I didn't know if you want to continue your
no,
thought there.
I love it. Yeah, but I think it's good. I think that it's going to change how we make games and also what games are capable of. But I think it's a good thing because it's going to increase the velocity of game development. Like programming takes a long time, and as engines become more complex, you have to have people that have this specialized knowledge. You know, if you're not using Unreal or Unity, if you're using like a proprietary in-house engine, all of a sudden the only way to learn how to use that engine is if you're working there. So anytime you bring in a new engineer, they have to learn this new engine. So
Oh,
integrating
dude,
AI is just going to make it easier.
that was our
Um,
biggest thing when we were working on that expansion project. Is it was a
you have
proprietary
to learn the
engine.
tools.
And on top of that, it was a proprietary engine where the team had the whole thing had been built up from being an on-site product. So it was
Yeah,
constantly needing to do server calls and security checks. And when COVID hit, it was obvious that this engine was not built to work outside of the headquarters building, right?
yep,
And so
yep.
when they brought us on, I mean, it took us, we spent 3 months just getting started on learning the engine, like we didn't even create any meaningful content. I mean, we created some stuff, don't
Yeah,
get me wrong, but actually, one of our devs actually, we created. I feel like we should have gotten paid for this, but of course we didn't. But we created one of our devs because he was just. It was driving him crazy how long it took to create a build off of it because we would have to send it to their internal server system, which would then render and process the
it's
builds,
partner.
and
Yeah.
and that was like a 24-hour process. So
Gee.
every time we wanted a playable version of the game to do a check on something, an out of engine check, it would take like 24 hours to get the build back. And he created this whole like parallel system, and we got that down to like 8 hours. So we could run our builds and get them in 8 hours.
Yeah.
No appreciation, no respect, but it helped
No
us
respect
out.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it helped us out a lot. Where it's like, I mean, there's a big difference from, okay, we're gonna set this and start at 5 o'clock when we leave.
Mhm.
It's gonna process overnight, and it might take 12 to 20 hours to process out. So hopefully it's done by the time we get back into work the next day. Uh, Between that and being able to do 2 or 3 builds a day was, I mean, that's a huge
Oh, it's
advantage.
game changing. It's game changing. Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, since you love AI, you're gonna go to the mat for it. Well, let me say, I think there are some. I think about the Mass Effect Legendary Edition as being kind of like
Yes.
almost the gold standard of, at least from an asset creation kind of standpoint, of AI
Hmm.
implementation. Because the reality is, without the use of AI, we never would have gotten. There's just so
No,
much content in 3 Mass
exactly.
Effect games. They never would have gone and paid people to upres, one by one.
Every
So
single thing. Yeah.
yeah, so they had to use AI to update the code and get it ready for new systems, to update all the art assets and get them like 4K ready and everything. And then they had individual artists go in and kind of clean up everything afterwards. So I think that stuff's good. My concern is that the implementations of this technology, this goes back to what I was kind of talking about before with the aligned incentives, but the implementation of the technology is going to result in a lot of job losses.
Mhm.
How do we, like, if we lived in a Star Trek world, like, I wouldn't care, right? Like, if everybody had access to food and housing and education and healthcare, and like you could bounce between jobs without potentially becoming destitute, like, cool, let's AI everything up, right? Like,
Yeah.
but that's not the world we live in. And I'm sort of connecting this as well to the educational side of the games industry, which is like, we're pumping out a lot of graduates in game design. And I do not think at the higher educational level, we're being honest with these students that there may not be a position for them when they
Oh,
graduate.
truly. Yeah.
And so I see a lot of kind of compounding factors. So I don't know. You're the onion. Tell me, am I off here?
I don't
What are
think
you
you're
thinking?
off. I think gaming job profiles as we see them are going to change as we integrate more AI. Like instead of being like a game programmer, you might be like an AI game programmer because AI in its current state still needs a user to feed in the information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of us have seen it from like whether you use Claude or ChatGPT, the more precise you can make that prompt, the better the output you get. So I see there being a shift, or there being a lot of like AI gameplay programmers who know how to do gameplay programming, let's say, but also know how to talk to the AI in a way where they can get very specific, detailed things. Um, what I think is going to happen, which is kind of counter to what we're seeing in like the industries overall, is that there's going to need to be more QA because as we get more things that like we're trusting AI to generate and then we're putting it in the game, we're going to have some way to test that in a more reliable fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether that's QA or whether that's like people who are like AI checkers on the back end, there's going to be some sort of check system.
Yeah.
But I do agree with what you're saying. There's going to be an elimination in some roles. Like AI is going to absorb some entry level positions, and that's going to be unfortunate for like graduates or like transition people who are coming from healthcare into the gaming industry. You might not find that associate programmer or associate tech artist role anymore because now it's an AI role. But I think if you learn how to use AI instead of fighting against it, you will set yourself up to have like a job in the future because they're going to need those people who you are a
Sure.
skilled tech artist, you know what the tools are. You can also talk to AI in a way where they can do the job for you, and then you can do the more complex things that we need you to do. Like we don't need a
Yeah,
tech artist to sit there and make 300 guns. We need them to make the 50 modifiers for those 300 guns. Let AI do the 300 repetitive 300 pistols every day type of situation.
sure. I think that's a good sort of piece of advice, a good way to think about it. One of the things I mention to people is you always have to analyze things from like the macro and the micro level. And so
Hmm.
from a micro level, I think that works because that's specific advice you can give to a person on how to be successful, or maybe a direction that they should consider. On the macro level, though, there's still only going to be so many roles for
Yeah.
folks, and I think it is going to become become challenging. I'm kind of curious, just with your sort of. I've been beating this drum for a while, so let me just throw this out and see what you think. Is like,
Okay.
I mean, I'm 41. I've been pretty much, or no, I'm 43 now. Shit, time, man. But I have grown up with like every iteration of the games industry, the way we kind of think about the games industry now,
Hmm.
and it's always been, understandably so, it's always sort of like graphics, visuals and graphics. That's always the thing that like pushes computers, and that's what you see because that's what the easiest thing to market and sell, right? Is the
Yeah.
visuals of the thing. But one of the things that, like, when I was growing up, there was always this really big conversation about simulations and NPC AI and like being able to have all these really cool interactions in the game. And I feel like that's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit over the past decade or so. And so one of my hopes with AI is that maybe we will start to see some really cool character and NPC interactions or environmental things. I don't know what GTA 6 is doing. Like maybe they're doing some wild stuff. It could be cool.
Yeah.
But again, I'm playing Cyberpunk. I love Cyberpunk. I think that game is amazing, but its NPC stuff is very rudimentary.
Hmm.
Obviously, Bethesda's got a lot of stuff where they try to make these giant sandboxes, and you get all that Bethesda jank. So I'd be curious your thoughts. Do you think that AI might be a tool that can help us move towards those more sophisticated simulations and interactions in a game space?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been keeping my eye on Enjoy, that crafting game that they've been working on, and they released a reveal, I think a few days ago, maybe a week ago, of like their system called Smart NPCs, where they're calling it secondary controllable characters. And it's exactly like what you're talking about and what my dreams were, where it's like you could be standing and just like watching the world around you, and these smart NPCs interact with like the not smart NPCs, the dumb NPCs, the more standard ones that we're used to, and they have their own logic and behavior trees and machine learning that evolves. And so in the demo that they showed, it was a smart NPC that walked up to an NPC who was doing the I'm lost animation. The smart NPC realized that like, hey, they're lost, and they decided to like, oh, let me give them directions. And now that dumb NPC decided to like go to like its next place in like an interaction tree. So maybe it goes to a bakery. And like the player did nothing about that. And on the other side, like the player can interact with the smart NPC, and maybe you convince them that they should follow their dreams. And so they showed like the next day, the smart NPC now quit their job at NASA and decided to open a bakery. And so now there's a new bakery in the world because you interacted with this smart NPC that has like some level of logic to it. Um, so I'm excited for things like that. Will it make it into like every single game? Probably not, because I'm sure that that's heavy and like enjoys like a Sims experience where they want to give you as much simulation as possible.
Yeah.
But I think I think it's going to be determined by what players want. If the need for simulation games starts to spike again and people really like go back into I want more simulation games, yeah, it might get applied more. GTA 6 might be the beginning of like smart NPCs making it to like the mainstream and things like that. But I think right now players are so focused on like either the get good mentality with like the Souls games and all of those,
Yeah.
or kind of like the twitchy fighter games like Marvel Rivals and Overwatch and like Call of Duty. There's not as big of a community of people who are looking for like these deep simulation games, at least from what I've seen. Like it seems like it's becoming more of like a smaller section of the larger gaming community.
Yeah, yeah. I just from like a I kind of only play single player games these days generally, except for Path of Exile too. Um, but I want it's just something I noticed, and as I play more Cyberpunk again, it's just something I noticed where it's like I wish there was more ways to handle situations or interact with problem solving.
Yeah.
So like one of the big things that I think Cyberpunk really suffers from is Deus Ex. I think did this a lot better, and unfortunately, I don't know if we're ever going to see another Deus Ex game again.
Probably not.
Um,
Probably not.
but
Yeah.
there are plenty of missions in Cyberpunk where it's like go do a thing and you need to like interact with a character, but it's never clear, can I go talk to this character or is this character just automatically going to become hostile to me? And so there's a
Yeah.
lot of times where I was like, okay, there's the guy, I'll save the game, and then I go get close to him, and if he instantly goes hostile, I'm like, okay, so this is just a character I can't really talk to or interact with in any way. So it's like there's no
Yeah.
way for me to like talk my way into getting the thing that I need from this character. I just have to go snap his neck and call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being able to create worlds where like every character in some way is interactable in some, and this is I really think that this kills me. I don't know if you ever played Deus Ex Mankind Divided,
Mm-hmm.
but that game is just phenomenal at like it gives you a goal and there's like 8 different ways to achieve it, and I've probably beaten that game 6 times and I still find new ways to like traverse through the environments or like new
Yeah.
doors I can hack to open to get around something. From a level design perspective, that game is brilliant. So that like that's the kind of stuff that I find interesting, and I think that's why a lot of people really liked Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
is because it gave you that feeling that's like, I'm gonna try this and see if it works. And a lot of
Yeah.
times it works. Like I'm gonna set this chicken on fire, and then you get a baked chicken out of it or whatever. Like it's just all these weird things that you can do.
Yeah.
And so you can tell that the developers were sitting around being like, okay, somebody's going to ask this question. Should we create an answer for that question?
Yeah.
And if AI can help on that, like that sounds great to
That sounds
me.
great.
Because
Yeah.
I just feel like, I mean, just between you and me, like everyone's getting like their rocks off about like ray tracing and path tracing, but like I don't really give a shit, to be honest. Like I mean, it looks good, and there's a new Cyberpunk mod that's been going on for like the past
It's
week. That
crazy.
photo
Yeah.
real one is insane. And like, I'm not saying we shouldn't make great looking stuff, but like, I would rather if you could take ray tracing out and replace it with a more sophisticated NPC system, I would take that any day.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm not the target market anymore. I'm just some old man, grumble grumble.
Well,
So
well,
I don't
even
know.
ray tracing, like there's a lot of discussion going on where, photorealism is very genre like age specific. Like if you look at what photorealism qualified as like 20 years ago, we're like, oh, that's terrible. Now for us, I mean, it looks photorealism, but who knows what it's going to look like 20 years from now when we are
Sure.
all in goggles and glasses and everything like that. And so a lot of games are pivoting towards like stylized games are timeless because
Yeah.
that's the style of the game. Like no matter what age it is, 20 years from now, that style is still going to hold up. And so I do see a lot of games getting away from like that photorealism effect and trying to
Hmm.
go more like develop their own style, make their game a stylized representation of the world. Because then 5 years from now, 10 years from now, like that style will hold up more than, like you said, the technology of ray tracing. Like
Yeah.
10 years from now, we're going to be like, oh, this is trash. Like, what were we
Yeah.
doing?
I have a session that I talk to my students about aesthetics and style, and we look at a lot of Nintendo games because their art direction has always just been so like on point, and
Mhm.
the original Mario, like obviously it's an older game, it shows its age, but like that game still looks good, and a lot of the elements of that are recognizable today. We know what
Yeah,
the coin block looks like. We know what the mushrooms look like. We know what Mario looks like.
exactly.
And so yeah, creating a style will keep that in mind. I think that's like one of my favorite games is also like the BioShock franchise. Like I think that game has a
Yes. Yep.
very sophisticated look that's not photorealistic. And I probably revisit that game. I'll go through and play all three of them like every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And it still looks wonderful. And yeah, I agree. I think the movement towards quote unquote photorealism can kind of bite you in the butt, because then when the next big visual tech boom happens, you kind of look back on it and you're like, oh,
Yeah. We're
it looks a
outdated
little
now.
rough.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just those sort of visual impacts that sort of stick with you, I think, do have their own style, and you can see that in everything, right? Like Star Wars has its own style, its vibe with it. We may have gotten off the beaten path on that a little bit here and there over the years, but I think we've kind of come back to what's people kind of view as Star Wars,
Yeah.
and creating that sense of being in the Star Wars world. And yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm just not sure. This is a weird question to say, but like, how many styles can you possibly have, right? Because every time you create a style,
Yeah.
they're gonna work on owning that. They're gonna trademark that lickety split. So
Yeah.
it feels like eventually, I mean, we're already kind of regurgitating everything, which I don't think is. Before healthcare, I was an artist. So my
Okay. Yeah.
bachelor's is in fine arts photography, and one of the things you learn when you're an artist is like everything is an inspiration on something else, right? Like you're
Mm.
taking the things that you love and that speak to you, and then trying to give it your own little, your own little slant, your own flourish, if you can. But it's very rare that something completely new and novel comes
Yeah.
out.
Oh, absolutely. Like there's only so much you can do with like, even cell shading. Like the first time I saw cell shading, I think was Borderlands. Borderlands has like a really bold cell shaded kind of
Mhm.
thing, but now it's like, you see that quite often. You see kind of like the
Well,
asymmetric and everything.
I'll jump in real fast because you're mentioning about the sort of stylization. The term a lot of people use is it's like the Wind Waker effect, where Legend of Zelda
Yes.
Wind
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Waker,
yeah, yeah.
when that game came out, man, like a lot of people shit on that game, and that was like pre-internet the way it is now, Um, and
They went
now
out of their
looking,
way.
yeah, now looking back, everyone's like, yeah, that game's gorgeous. Like the artistic decisions that they made on that game are great. And when they did the up-res 4K version, like the remaster of it, like that game's beautiful.
Hmm.
And so I do agree with you. I'm kind of curious. I don't know how much you can talk about this because I'm sure you're under the good old NDA, but Marathon I found interesting when they made that announcement, because like I played the original Marathon back in the
Yeah.
90s, and
Hmm.
I have not heard anybody talk about Marathon in 25 years. Like nobody. It was like me and another friend of mine, and my other friend loved that game. Like I liked it, but he loved it. And then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, we're gonna make another Marathon game." I'm like, "Really? Okay. I
Hmm.
mean, whatever." But that begs the question, talking about like sort of aesthetics and art style, that like Marathon, I think just by the nature of it being so old and not being in the zeitgeist, doesn't really have an aesthetic style.
Yeah.
So, did you guys kind of internally, and maybe you weren't part of those discussions, but like, did you sit around and be like, okay, well, what does Marathon in 2025 even look like? Like, what is that visual identity that game's going to have?
Yeah. I mean, I I wasn't in those discussions and I can't like speak to it specifically, but like those discussions happen. I mean, especially like talking with other people who have been part of studios that have like I guess like revisited old IPs and like rebranded them in like a modern world. Like that's a valid discussion. Like, do we keep it in the aesthetic that it was and just bring it to like the modern world and keep it, the marathon dungeon crawler where you're listening to like the ambient AI kind of going crazy over your shoulder?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we take the IP and re-envision it for today's world? And what would it look like if Marathon would have continued? And from what we were able to see from like that first like state of play trailer, I think Bungie decided to re-envision Marathon. It looks like it might have some of the dungeon crawler aspects to it, maybe. I played some of the old Marathon and I was like, this is dark. Like, and this AI is like
Oh,
very
totally.
much against you. And so I hope that they bring some of that like nature into like the new marathon that like, OG players like yourself are very much used to. I hope they don't just like, oh yeah, same name, completely different game, but the overall art direction is something that has to be decided on very early on. Whether it changes throughout the process, sure, that's fine. But once you decide that you're going to make a game, you're like, what does the game look like? And
Yeah.
that's where the creative director has to put on their hat and work with the art team and work with like what's the story, what's the world, and all these teams to really bring that vision to life. Um, and I'm sure it's not an easy one to land on because there's going to
Oh,
be people
sure.
who love it, and there's going to be people who are like, this isn't marathon. What is this? Like, this isn't my
Yeah.
game.
And
Um,
I and
so,
I'm one of those people too that like I realize this is sort of like heretical. But like I was never the biggest Halo fan. A lot of
oh
my friends
wow.
really. I know. I just here's the thing. This is the reason why. I just I feel bad saying this because I know there's a lot of talented people and a lot of talented artists, and I'm just some asshole on the internet, right? Like my opinion doesn't really matter. Um, but I don't really like Bungie's character designs. Like I played a lot of
Interesting.
Destiny,
Okay.
and I didn't really like. I remember playing Halo, and the first time the little guys came up, whatever the little pygmy guys, I can't remember what they're called, are the grunts or whatever,
Hmm.
showed up, and I'm like, what the hell are these things? And like at that point, I just kind of like lost me, and I just never really clicked into its visual aesthetic.
Hmm.
But also, it's one of the biggest franchises in the world, so like, what do I know, right? And so when I saw the re-envisioning of Marathon, I was intrigued because it doesn't seem to be following the Halo Destiny vibe. It's almost looking like a little, I don't know, more Overwatch meets like oh, I'm totally blanking on the what's the parkour game that was super big. Oh my lord. My brain, Monday, my brain.
I don't know why. I know it's not Brink. I don't know why Brink came to my mind.
No, they
Hardcore
just
game.
they just did a re-release of it. It's with the Asian female protagonist. Oh my god, hold on, let me find it. It's gonna drive me crazy. We'll get there. Hey, sweetie, I see you, pumps. Maybe I won't find it. As soon as I see it, I'm just gonna like lose my mind. Mirror's Edge. There we go. There we
Oh,
go.
yeah, okay.
So it looks like it has like an Overwatch meets Mirror's Edge kind of vibe. I also really don't like Overwatch's design aesthetic. So, um, but I am curious because I just feel that I really have been keeping an eye on all these acquisitions and stuff over the past couple of years, and Sony like I love Sony, but it's like God bless them, they cannot get the first person shooter game that they want. They haven't been able to for like 35 years. And so buying Bungie, bringing them in as probably, I mean, I would argue that Bungie's probably the best first person shooter studio in the world.
Yeah.
Some people might feel that the Call of Duty games, but that's even kind of cheating because that's like three studios that are stuck into this
Yeah.
grinder of making these games. But whatever. Let's say that Bungie's in the top three. Okay.
Hmm.
So is Sony finally going to get that FPS game they've been dying for, where they tried with Killzone and just couldn't quite get? And I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting how we Doom is another example of a game where when they announced the Doom remake, I was one of those
Oh my
people that was like,
gosh.
I
Yeah.
don't know, are you going to be able to do that? Like, Doom might
Hmm.
just be a thing of its place in its time. But to their credit, I think the new Doom games are great. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if
And
the
what
visual aesthetic quite matches the old Doom, but whatever.
and I love the new look. I think what Doom Dark Ages is that the new one that's coming out soon?
Oh yeah, that one's wild. Yeah, when they
Yeah,
announced
I
that,
was
I'm
like,
like,
oh my
okay,
gosh.
okay.
Yeah. Like
And
I think it looks great.
yeah, and I'm one of those people too. It's like I tend to give. I watch a lot of movies. I go and see. I got the AMC subscription, so I see like one movie a week
Oh
in
yeah.
theaters. And I'm one of those people. That's like if a developer or a studio or a creator is like willing to try something like a new idea or whatever, even if it doesn't quite work exactly the way that I want it to work, I'm willing to give people like the benefit of the doubt, because I would much rather have an industry filled with creative people that are trying stuff than one that's just constantly regurgitating the same stuff. And
Yeah,
so I'm, let's see what Marathon can do. Let's see what a medieval Doom can look like,
e-
right?
exactly. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, and yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I would rather see studios try something new and maybe it doesn't do well, which kind of goes back to the beginning of the conversation. Like, don't ever overestimate too much. Like, let
mhm.
a success be a success. But when we get to the point where like you're too afraid to try something new, like that's just as dangerous in my head. Like then you're kind of like, then why play the game? Like if it's the same one as the one that we just played as version two, why would I buy version three? Like it's the
Sure.
same thing. So yeah, I'm excited for like a lot of these old IPs coming back and IPs being reimagined, like Doom, Medieval. Like I've never played any Doom game. I've watched people play them. I've heard like a lot of my friends say that they're great and that I should give them a shot. But that one,
Well,
Doom
apparently
Dark
you don't play
Ages, like that
games,
looks
so
amazing.
there you go.
I don't. I have 2 to 3 hours on almost every game that people recommend me play,
Hmm.
but it's like for research purposes only. Like I go in there truly like taking notes, what I like, what I don't like, and then I watch people play the rest of the game.
So, what is it about game development then that attracts you? Like, if you don't really consume it as a, an auteur, as a person, what is it about the process of games or the industry or something that has attracted you to it?
I love puzzles. And so
Okay, so
to
you're like
me, it
you're a
goes two
systems
ways.
thinker.
Yeah, like I love looking at like one of my best friends, her name is Molly, and like I can sit on a call with her for hours and she'll just be talking about all the games that she plays and I'll sit there and like break down like how does that feature work? Like how does this puzzle feature work? How do they do the cover system in Gears of War? How does that AI behavior work in like all these different games? And I love that feeling of like breaking it down and then trying to recreate it. Um, but then overall, like I love being a manager. Like I love inspiring my team to kind of like push themselves and try something new, which is like weird. Like, but I love management, and so combining those
I
things,
don't think it's
when I
weird.
was working with Bungie, one of the best things was like I would be talking with my team about like, hey, I'm hitting this barrier and I want to do X and Y, and then like my puzzle brain would kick in and we would start like figuring out what they need to do, and then we would hit that aha moment, and I'd be like, go forth and conquer, my friend. um and like even with being like a mentor for a lot of like different student programs, like they get to that aha moment, and I'm sure you've seen it too with all the
Hmm.
people you worked with. Like
Absolutely.
you see that shine in their eye and they're having that eureka moment, and then they come back 2 weeks later and they show you something that you're like, I didn't even know you were going to take it that way, but this is awesome.
Oh, dude. So there's a game that just went through our accelerator. You can look it up online. It's called Perfect Employee, PURR. Like it's a cat game, and it's a VR sort of cat simulator where you're an office cat and you're interacting in an office environment. And they had all these like little interactions you could do, like you can knock things off tables and typical cat behavior, right? But
Hmm.
it didn't have that like that kind of clear thread in it on like it was a neat sandbox idea, but there wasn't really like a core game in it yet.
Yeah.
And after GDEX last year was the Shiny State Games Conference, like the following weekend. So they exhibited at GDEX where they showcased and lots of people had a really good time. And then they did the Shawnee State Games Conference. And on the second day of the conference, I was walking by and the whole team was at their table, their expo table, and they had note cards and Sharpies out. I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they're like, "We just had like a breakthrough." And we're like, "Oh, okay." And like they went and they talked to me about it, and they were talking about how what they think they want to do is that you are a cat that's like a rogue agent sort of working for another company, and your job is to disrupt the current company you're in as a cat in whatever way you can without getting caught. And I was like, that now you've got something, because now you're like,
Yeah.
okay, what are cats known for? Being sort of nimble and agile and causing trouble when they're not, when you can't see them, right? You hear something
Yeah.
in the background, and you're like, I'm constantly yelling at my cat, like, what are you doing? They're like little kids, right? Um,
Yeah.
And now that they've created this almost like stealth environment in VR where you're trying to mess things up, but you're trying to also not get caught by other
Hmm.
employees at the business. I was like, now you've got a really interesting idea. And you could tell that they were just like throwing notes around. And it was
Yeah,
just really cool to see that energy on a product they've
yeah,
been working on for a while, but they just kind of couldn't get past that hump, right?
yeah, exactly. No, that's
Sweet.
great. And it gives me what is it called? Like We Happy Few. I don't know if you ever
Mm-hmm.
played that game,
It was
but
on my
it's like
list. I really want to. It came out and it didn't get super good reviews, and I just kind of didn't go into it.
it
But
was
I
interesting.
still want to give it a shot.
Yeah. But when you were talking to me about that game, that's what exactly what my brain went to. Because like We Happy Few is like you're supposed to be infiltrating this community that takes these happy pills without being caught. And like it kind of creeped me out. I don't think I hit my 2 hour mark on that game because I don't
Okay.
do the whole like the AI gets really close to the camera and you just see like dead eyes in your face. I'm like, no, that's freaky. I don't do that. Like
Yeah, no,
Uncanny
I'm
Valley.
good.
I'm good. I'm good. But no,
Yeah.
that's great. Like I love that moment too.
Awesome. Well, we're getting close to the end here, and I don't want to keep you. So, thank you for being on the show. Great conversation. Is there any way that if people are interested, they can follow you or your company? Any social media or anything you'd want people to know about?
Yeah. So me, Monday Atughonu, I'm on LinkedIn as well as our studio, Leap of Faith Studios, is on LinkedIn. You can follow us there. We actually just released our first like cinematic trailer for Project Haven, our upcoming game. So like, please go take a look, like, share. And then we also have our website, leapoffaithstudios.com. And yeah, you can shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat with new people. We aren't currently hiring, but if you're look at Project Haven. The demo is available on Steam, and you're like interested in learning more. We have a contact us form on our website, and we'd love to keep you connected with the project, get you added to our Discord server, and just stay connected in general.
Awesome. We'll spread the word around as well through our emails and stuff. So,
I
Monday, thank you
appreciate it.
so much for being on the show.
No, thank you for having me. If you ever need another day of the week to join, just let me know.
Will do. All right. So this has been episode 51 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Great conversations. Of course, we are on every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern on Twitch. So slash the GDEX on Twitch. Couple quick notes. Keep an eye on the GDEX. We're going to be making some announcements for the date. I guess I'll just let you know. We're tentatively right now, September 4th through the 7th of 2025. So I haven't signed the agreement yet, but I've been told it's on its way from the convention center. And we will also be announcing some early bird ticket prices for both exhibitors and for guests. So keep an eye on our social medias and everything. And I'll make sure to update you on the show when we have that out. But for now, I want to thank you all for watching. Of course, I am Chris, joined as always by Baby. Got Pumpkin over there. Thank you again, Monday, for joining us as our special guest, and for everybody else in the chat. And we will see you next week.